Have you ever wondered why, after consuming hours of motivational content, do you feel more empty than inspired? Why that feeling that something fundamental is missing, as if you were living the life of another person? If you have reached that point where traditional motivation does not work, where the techniques of grind and optimization leave you feeling that you are betraying something deep inside you, then you need to hear this. Carl Jung, the psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, understood something that the modern motivational industry has completely forgotten: that true motivation does not come from the ego, but from the soul. He knew that when we ignore the deepest needs of our being in favor of superficial goals and external validation, we not only lose energy, we lose our connection with who we really are. In this video, we are going to explore why modern motivation leaves you empty, and how Jung's insights about individuation, shadow, and self can guide you towards a source of purpose that is not exhausted because it is rooted in your deepest truth. If you are tired of pretending, if you feel there is something more authentic waiting to emerge in you, stay with me. What you are going to discover can change forever the way you understand your own motivation and your path towards the whole. Have you wondered why, after consuming so much motivational content, you feel more empty than before? Carl Jung knew it. Modern motivation does not talk to your soul, but suffocates it. This culture of perpetual grind, of constant optimization and transactional manifestation, has made the human being another product of the market. They sell you the illusion that you are a machine that can be perfected, completely ignoring that your psyche is a living field of symbols, instincts, and deep truths that cannot be reduced to dopamine routines and external goals. Jung understood that when we live only from the rational mind, we lose something vital and essential. Contemporary motivation feeds the ego obsessively, that part of you that needs to prove, win, and fear the inferiority. But the ego, by its nature, can never sustain a truly significant purpose. It's like trying to fill a broken glass. No matter how much you pour, you always empty. This is the reason why you feel that temporary inspiration followed by frustration, that endless cycle of emotional climbs and falls that leaves you asking you if something is fundamentally bad with you. The truth is that it is rarely said aloud, is that the current motivational culture is disconnecting you from your essence. It teaches you to obsess with your image instead of cultivating your soul, to seek external validation instead of internal alignment. Jung would call this excessive identification with the person, that social mask we use to work in the world. When all your motivation comes from maintaining and perfecting this mask, you are living a life that is not yours, and your soul knows it. That's why you feel empty. The problem is not you. The problem is that they have sold you a version of motivation that completely ignores the deepest needs of your being. Jung knew that the true direction in life does not emerge from the willpower or of mental optimization techniques, but of something much deeper, the connection with yourself, that organizing center of your psyche that knows your authentic purpose better than your conscious mind could never. Carl Jung revolutionized our understanding of human motivation by proposing something radical: that the real impulse of life does not come from the ego, but from the process he called individuation. This is not another concept of self-help. It is the recognition that your psyche has its own intelligence, a wisdom that transcends what your conscious mind can understand. Individuals is the process of becoming who you really are, not who you think you should be, or in whom others expect you to be. Jung understood that this path towards totality requires something that modern motivation avoids at all costs. Face your shadow. The shadow is all those parts of yourself that you have repressed, denied, or rejected because they do not fit the image you want to project. While the culture of grind tells you that you ignore your weaknesses and focus only on your strengths, Jung knew that the most reject of yourself contain exactly the energy and power you need to live authentically. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your buried treasure. The difference between the motivation of the ego and the motivation of the soul is like the difference between an artificial fire and the sun. Artificial fire is spectacular, noisy, attracts attention, but is quickly consumed and leaves smoke alone. The sun, on the other hand, constantly shines, nourishes life, and its energy seems inexhaustible because it is connected to something much bigger than himself. When your motivation comes from self, that central sun from your psychic system, you don't need to constantly force yourself because you are aligned with the natural flow of your being. Jung also taught us about the transcendent function, that psyche's ability to create something new from the tension between opposites. When you feel that you are caught between what you should do and what you really want to do, you are not experiencing a problem that needs to be solved quickly. You are in the laboratory of your soul, where something completely new is trying to be born. Superficial motivation tells you that you eliminate this tension as quickly as possible. Jung invites you to inhabit it, to listen to it, because in that discomfort is the seed of your next evolution. There is something that is awakening in collective consciousness, and Jung would have recognized him immediately. Hunger for authenticity. People are beginning to get tired of the superficial hype and are looking for something real, something that nourishes their soul instead of simply stimulating their ego. This is not a casual phenomenon. It is what Jung would call psychic compensation. When a culture becomes too unilateral, in this case obsessed with external performance, the collective psyche naturally seeks balance. You are starting to ask different questions. Instead of, how can I be more productive? You wonder, what is truly important for me? Instead of, how can I optimize my life? But you ask, how can I live more authentically? These questions do not arise from your logical mind. They emerge from your soul, from that part of you that has always known who you really are, below all social conditioning and external expectations. Jung understood that real purpose is not something you invent or manifest. It is something you remember. It is as if you had been using a costume for so long that you forgot your true face. The cure does not consist of adding more things to your life, but in removing everything that is not authentically yours. It is a process of unfortunateness, deprogramming, back to that essence that has always been there, patiently waiting for you to stop pretending to be someone else. The exhaustion you feel does not only come from excess work, it comes from the claim. It comes from trying to import things that do not feed your soul, to try to look good when you feel disconnected. Jung would call this a betrayal of self. Your nervous system is fatigued not because of the genuine effort, but by the effort to maintain a facade that does not reflect your inner truth. When you begin to align your external life with your internal reality, you discover that you have much more energy than you thought, because you are no longer fighting yourself. Have you noticed that it is rare to see a truly spiritually tired child? Children can be physically exhausted after playing, but rarely experience that existential fatigue that characterizes so many adults. Jung would know why. Children still live since their essence, from that natural connection with life that has not been conditioned by the demands of society. They are simply without the constant need to prove their value or maintain an image. Society gradually teaches us to abandon these living parts of ourselves. It teaches us that being spontaneous is irresponsible, that following our natural curiosity is unchanging, that expressing our authentic emotions is inappropriate. Little by little, we change the being by the do, the authenticity for approval, the connection with our soul due to compliance with external expectations. Jung would call this a loss of connection with self, and is one of the most common tragedies of modern life. When a living creature is forced to act unnaturally for prolonged periods, he gets sick. This is exactly what happens when we constantly live from the person, that social mask, without ever allowing ourselves to be who we really are. Your nervous system records this dissonance as a constant threat, keeping you in a state of chronic stress that cannot be relieved with superficial relaxation techniques, because the problem is not in your body, it is in the fundamental betrayal of your essential nature. Jung understood that this spiritual fatigue is actually a psychic health signal. It is your soul telling you that something is wrong, that you are living a life that is not yours. It is not laziness, it is not a lack of discipline. It is not that something is broken in you. It is your inner wisdom protesting a way of life that violates your deepest nature. When you start honoring this protest instead of suppressing it with more external motivation, you discover that your natural energy begins to return, because you are no longer fighting the current of your own being. modern motivation is based on a subtle but devastating lie that you are not enough unless you are constantly surpassing others. Jung would recognize this as a manifestation of divided thinking, that trend of the mind to create artificial dualities that separate us from ourselves and others. This constant competition mentality is not only exhausting, it is fundamentally unnatural for a being that is designed for connection and collaboration. Jung knew that the true purpose emerges from the connection with yourself, with others, and with something bigger than your individual ego. When you stop seeing life as a competition that you must win and you begin to see it as a symphony in which you have a unique part to touch, everything changes. The parts of you that you have labeled as problems, your sensitivity, your need for loneliness, your different rhythm, can be exactly the messengers you need to listen to find your authentic contribution to the world. It is not about abandoning all the goals, but about rooting them in something real. When your goals sprout from your inner truth instead of external expectations, when they are motivated by the genuine desire to contribute instead of fear of not being sufficient, you discover a source of energy that does not run out because it is connected to the infinite flow of life itself. Jung would call this living from the self instead of the ego, and it is the difference between a constant fighting life and a fluid purpose life. As Jung said, the privilege of a life is to become who you really are. This individuation process is not a spiritual luxury. It is an urgent need for our world. We need people who are rooted in their truth, who have made peace with their shadow, who can contribute from a place of authenticity instead of compensation. If you feel displaced in the culture of modern motivation, it is not because you are lazy or defective. It can be because your soul is remembering itself, and that is exactly what the world needs now. The truth that Jung taught us is simple but revolutionary. You are not broken. You are waking up. That feeling of vacuum after consuming superficial motivation is not a fault of yours. It is your soul protesting a way of life that does not honor your deepest nature. When you start listening to that protest, when you start living from yourself instead of your ego, you discover a source of energy and purpose that does not need to be constantly fed from outside because it springs from the inside. Now I want to listen to you. What part of this exploration about authentic motivation and individuation resonated more with you? Have you experienced that spiritual fatigue we are talking about? How is your process of awakening your deepest truth to be manifested? Share your experience in comments. Your story matters, and it can be exactly what another person needs to listen, to feel less alone on this path. If this content touched something real in you, if you feel that finally someone is speaking the language of your soul, be sure to subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications. This is a space for deep thinkers, for those who are tired of superficiality and look for truths that really transform. Like this video if you helped you see your own experience with new eyes, and share it with someone you know that you are also looking for something more real. Remember, the privilege of a life is to become who you are truly. Your soul knows the way. You just need the courage to follow her. Until next time, and never forget that your authenticity is exactly what this world needs.